Hey everyone, welcome in. Ready to dive deep into AAVE with us today. You guys sent over some seriously interesting stuff on this one. Got me thinking about the future of, well, money, really.
And that's exactly what AAVE is all about, right? Taking these big ideas, decentralization, blockchain, and actually applying them to lending and borrowing. This isn't just theory anymore.
Yeah, that Coin Bureau video you said, they were really high on AAVE's potential, especially as DeFi, decentralized finance starts to gain some real traction.
Huge EE potential is what they said. Can't argue with that.
But before we go full crypto futurist, let's back up a bit for anyone just tuning in. What exactly is AAVE and how does this whole lending and borrowing thing actually work?
Simplest way I can put it. Imagine a bank, but instead of a building and a bunch of bankers, it's all run by code, smart contracts, the whole shebang. You want to earn interest on your crypto. Lend it out on AAVE, need to borrow some, put up your assets as collateral, just like a traditional loan.
Okay, I'm following so far. But what makes this different from just using like a regular bank? Why go through all this? You see, that's where the decentralized part gets really interesting. With AAVE, there's no big institution calling the shots, no central authority. Everything runs on algorithms. And these things called smart contracts, basically lines of code that automatically execute transactions when certain conditions are met. No middlemen, lower fees, and way more transparency, at least in theory.
So cutting out the banks, letting the computers handle everything, sounds efficient, but I gotta admit, part of me is thinking, what could possibly go wrong?
And you'd be right to wonder. It's not all smooth sailing. Even that Coin Bureau video, they mentioned AAVE's attempt to launch their own stablecoin called GHO.
Right, that did ring a bell. Didn't quite go as planned, though, did it?
Let's just say it faced some skepticism. The DeFi community, they're a discerning bunch. Big concerns about GHO's stability, whether it could actually hold its value against the US dollar, show just how hard it is to launch something this ambitious in such a decentralized way.
And then there was that security scare, too, right? The attempted exploit. That must have been a major wake-up call.
Oh, absolutely. Back in 22, some guy, same one involved with the Mango Markets exploit, tried to use a vulnerability in AAVE's system to, well, make off with a whole lot of crypto. They managed to stop it, which is a testament to their security. But it goes to show the stakes are incredibly high here. One wrong line of code, and things could go south very, very quickly.
So it's like they're constantly walking a tightrope, building this incredibly complex system, but also having to anticipate every possible way it could go wrong.
Exactly. And that's what makes this whole AAVE story so fascinating, right? They're pioneers out there exploring uncharted territory, pushing the boundaries of what's possible in finance. But with that comes risk, uncertainty, and yeah, a few bumps along the way. And you know what? They're figuring it out as they go.
Which brings us to the million-dollar question. How is AAVE actually governed? Who's making these decisions, trying to mitigate those risks, and what does all this mean for the future of this, let's be honest, pretty ambitious project? But first, we need to take a quick break.
So before the break, we were talking about AAVE, the risks, the whole shebang. But let's be honest, what good is a decentralized financial system if, well, no one's there to steer the ship, right?
Right, you need some kind of governance, even in a decentralized world. And that's where the AAVE DAO comes in. DAO stands for Decentralized Autonomous Organization. Catchy, right?
Catchy, sure. But what does it actually mean?
Basically, it means that instead of having like a board of directors or a CEO calling all the shots, it's the AAVE token holders who get to decide the future of the platform.
Okay, so it's like a democracy, but with crypto.
Exactly. Well, a very specific kind of democracy. Think of it like an online forum where anyone holding AAVE can submit proposals, debate them, and then the whole community votes on them. The more tokens you hold, the more weight your vote carries. Pretty cool, huh? In theory, yeah. But getting thousands of people to agree on anything, let alone something as complex as financial regulations, sounds, well, ambitious to say the least. And speaking of ambitious, that Coin Bureau video, they mentioned something about a situation with Michael Egoroff, the guy from Curve Finance, that really put this whole DAO system to the test, didn't it?
Yeah, the Egorov situation, bit of a nail biter, that one. He had used a huge amount of his own CRV tokens, the ones from Curve Finance, as collateral on AAVE to borrow, like, a ton of money.
Okay, so big player making big moves. What's the problem?
The problem was if the price of CRV went down, if his collateral lost value, well, AAVE could have been on the hook for a massive loss.
Ouch. So one guy's risky bet could have tanked the whole system. That's a lot of pressure on the AAVE DAO to get things right.
You said it. That whole situation highlighted what's called shortfall in DeFi. Basically, there just might not be enough assets available to cover potential losses in a real crisis. And, regulators, they took notice. This kind of thing has triggered, well, global financial meltdowns in the past.
Not exactly the kind of publicity DeFi needs, right? So did Aave learn anything from that whole Aave scare? They did launch those V3 and V4 upgrades, but I wasn't clear if those were, direct responses to that kind of risk.
So V3, which they rolled out back in 2022, that was already in the works before the whole Aave thing went down.
Yeah.
But it did lay the groundwork for a more, let's say, resilient system. By deploying Aave on multiple blockchains like Polygon and Mitoshi's, they're not putting all their eggs in one basket anymore. Spreads the risk a bit.
Smart move. But V4, that sounded like the really big overhaul. What's the deal with that one?
Okay, so V4, that's where things get really interesting. We're talking next-level automation. Think self-adjusting interest rates, loans that basically liquidate themselves before things go haywire, even the potential for the Aave platform to propose its own upgrades based on real-time data. It's kind of mind-blowing.
It's like they're trying to build a financial system that can literally think for itself, react to the market, and make its own decisions. That's both incredibly cool and also, I don't know, maybe a little unnerving. But isn't that kind of the opposite of what regulators want? I mean, they want transparency, sure, but also more control, right?
Million-dollar question right there.
Yeah.
And it's a tough one. On the one hand, you've got Aave pushing the limits of decentralization with V4, this whole idea of a self-governing system. On the other hand, you've got regulators circling, looking at DeFi lending and thinking, hold on, we need some rules here. Remember, Aave even got delisted from Bittrex, a pretty big exchange, over regulatory concerns.
Yeah, that was not a good look. And then there's that whole Wells notice thing with Uniswap, right? What exactly is a Wells notice anyway?
It's basically a formal warning shot from the SEC, the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. It means they're looking into you, thinking about bringing the hammer down, legally speaking. In Uniswap's case, the SEC is saying they were operating as an unregistered securities exchange. Not good.
So a shot across the bow for the whole DeFi world then.
Pretty much. Regulators are definitely paying attention now. So the question for Aave is, will this big push for automation with V4, this hands-off approach, be enough to satisfy the regulators, or are they going to have to make even bigger changes to how Aave is governed, how it operates? It's a tough spot to be in.
It's like they're trying to build a supersonic jet while the rule book for air travel is still being written, It's exciting, sure, but potentially disastrous. And speaking of potential disasters, that Coin Bureau video you sent, it mentions something about Aave maybe, possibly, switching to a whole new type of blockchain technology called Move. That sounds like a good place to pick up after a quick break. Don't go anywhere. All right, so before the break, things were getting kind of wild. Aave maybe switching to this whole other blockchain, this Move thing, feels like a big leap, even for a platform that's, let's be honest, known for taking risks. So what's the deal with Move? What makes it so special that Aave would even consider jumping ship like that?
Jumping ship might be putting it mildly. This isn't just switching platforms, it's more like switching planets. You see, Aave right now, it's built on Ethereum. That's their whole foundation. Move-based blockchains, these Aptos and Sui things, they're built on a completely different architecture, different programming language, different philosophy, the whole shebang.
Okay, so a pretty radical change then, but there's got to be a reason, right? What's so great about these Move blockchains? Why would Aave even consider such a move?
Speed, for one. Ethereum, it's the OG, but it can get bogged down. Transactions get pricey, things slow to a crawl, especially when things get busy. Move blockchains are built for speed, for scale. It's like upgrading from dial-up to fiber optic internet. For your money.
Okay, so faster transactions, got it. But what about user friendliness? I mean, that Coin Bureau video, it did make a big deal about Move being way easier to use, especially for folks who aren't, blockchain engineers.
Spot on. Ethereum, it can feel a bit like, learning a new programming language sometimes, especially for newcomers. Move aims to be way more intuitive, more like the apps and websites we use every day. If Aave is serious about going mainstream, bringing DeFi to the masses, they need an experience that's, actually enjoyable, easy to use.
Makes sense. So faster, cheaper, easier to use sounds like a no-brainer. Why wouldn't they just make the switch? What's the holdup?
If only it were that simple. Remember those regulatory headaches we talked about, the Aave situation? Those don't just disappear because you switch blockchains. In fact, they might even get worse. Aave would be starting from scratch, building a reputation all over again, proving their security, all while this new Move technology is, under the microscope.
And let's not forget competition. It's not like these Move blockchains are just sitting there empty, waiting for Aave to show up.
Exactly. Aave would be the new kid on the block, going up against projects that are already established on these move chains, already have users, a track record. It's a risk, for sure. A bet that the advantages of this new move technology outweigh the challenges of rebuilding, starting from zero in a whole new environment.
So it's a tough choice. Stick with what you know, even if it's got its quirks, or take a gamble on this shiny new thing, knowing it could be a huge success or a total flop.
And here's the thing, it's not just about Aave, right? They're a major player in the DeFi space. Whatever they do, it's going to have ripple effects. If they go all in on Move and it works, it could legitimize the technology, bring in a wave of new investment, new developers, the whole 9 yards. But if they stumble, well, it could scare people off, make investors think twice, set the whole DeFi space back. High stakes all around.
So where does that leave us? We've talked about Aave's journey so far, the ups, the downs, the challenges they've faced, the opportunities that are still out there. What's the key takeaway here? What should people keep in mind as they, watch this all unfold?
For me, the biggest takeaway is that DeFi, this whole world of decentralized finance, it's not a spectator sport. Aave's story is still being written, and frankly, it's a story that everyone has the potential to be a part of. This deep dive, it's given you a glimpse behind the curtain, but the real excitement comes from staying engaged, watching how this all plays out, and maybe even getting your hands dirty, participating in this grand experiment ourselves.
And on that note, I think it's time to wrap things up. We've covered a lot of ground today, from the nitty-gritty of how Aave works to the big picture questions about the future of finance. We've explored the risks, the potential rewards, the regulatory tightrope that Aave and the whole DeFi space are walking. But the most important thing is to keep asking questions, keep exploring, and keep an eye on Aave. They're definitely one to watch. Until next time, happy diving, everyone.